Welcome to another Sandpile. Can someone just confirm you can hear me okay in the chat window? Thanks, Penny. All right, well, we'll start off with some news. Just a reminder that this week, looks like on Friday, there's scheduled system maintenance for the EU and the US data centers. So you can look in the system updates forum, but it's a maintenance release. Customer impact will be intermittent interruptions for some features of admin for 2 times in total during the maintenance. Might be some interruptions in things like partner registration, trial site creation, Adobe Muse, Publish, maybe APIs, FTP. The first one they figure will last about 50 minutes. The second one may last as long as 90 minutes. Now they typically do these things overnight, but just to be aware. So they're starting at 9 p.m. Pacific time on Friday the 23rd. And it takes about 12 hours for both data centers, although they're suggesting that it's about 8 hours to complete on any given data center. So that's just something to remember. On the Business Catalyst blog, this is the first post in a little while, but they're talking about PHP integration. And this is Code Production is giving some sample information of how they created a PHP integration with Business Catalyst. They're using Business Catalyst basically as a data repository in the web app side and then in the CRM. So it's an interesting read and it's an interesting use. There was some back and forth within Chicago Digital about, kind of what was the point? Why wouldn't you just use a SQL database and those kind of things? But I think we kind of came around to, in this case, they probably wanted the CRM and then the control functionality of the web app, so they can have a custom web app where they can control these this equipment that's out in the field, and rather than build a full custom control functionality, they were able to do it with web apps within Business Catalyst. So anyway, that's an interesting read. On the BC Gurus side, I'll just put that link in the chat for you guys, if I can find the chat. On the BC Guru side, there is a new template going to be released on Thursday. So it's being called the Foundation 6 prototype. And I think really if I was describing it, it's like a back to the basics demonstration or setup with the Foundation 6 framework. And it's as minimally styled as possible. And it's as integrated as possible really with the Foundation 6 framework. So the intent is you throw your style on top of it, but the structure is there, the rows and the columns and the accordions and the form functionality and all those things are built into that. And my belief is they're going to use this new prototype to build all of the future templates coming out with. So we're definitely worth having a look at. That'll be released on Thursday. On the BC Academy side, on Thursday again, there'll be it's being called Complicated Layouts with HTML and CSS. That's another tutorial that I did. If you're paying attention, you probably saw that available on the BC Guru side. It's a similar recording, and we decided to make it available on both platforms. So if you don't happen to have a BC Guru's membership, you'll be able to see it on the Academy and vice versa. So this is where I used HTML and CSS to build some fairly complicated layouts in what I consider to be a fairly simple and straightforward manner. On the App Store, this nice editor I mentioned last week is showing up now as a new app, and right now it's free. There is a $39 US dollar setup fee. So again, this is free right now, and they're going to, it's an open beta. Once the beta is finished, they're going to decide how much it should be, probably a monthly subscription model. But now's your chance for $39 US really to have it set up and have a go at it and see if you like it or not without having to pay any monthly fees. So that's worth having a look at. And then there's been an update to this BC Zapier integration. And the notable additions, they say, is find a web app item. So you can find a web app item in a specific web app is what the update for this Zapier integration. Things to come or things that are planned are unsubscribe a user from a mailing list, unsubscribe a user from a secure zone, create a web app item, or update a contact. So that's some things that they have planned for the future of this Zapier integration from CBO. So pretty cool. That's probably all noted in the changelog. No, they didn't update the changelog. Oh, well. All right. So that is the news. Now we're talking about passing custom parameters to modules. So I will paste this into the chat here. This is the Business Catalyst documentation for passing custom parameters. Some things to note. They do note that it technically only applies to modules that use the named parameter syntax. So hopefully you know what that is. So if you're using a module that still has numbers, I think as a, for instance, the photo gallery, then a custom parameter will not work for you. It's only the ones that have the named parameter syntax. So module web apps as a, for instance. So they say traditionally each layout has a set of tags it can use. And this also applies to Liquid. For any given layout, you only have access to certain things within the layouts. So what this passing parameters for, it allows you to pass information into the module layouts. Now, I really did have a hard time finding examples. I didn't hit enter on that, sorry. There's a link to the docs. I had a hard time finding examples. I did find some, and Mike from Cloud9 was gracious enough to send me something that he's worked on. So we'll go through it. Hopefully someone else in the audience will have some examples, but I'll show you what I've got and we can go from there. So they say this module product feature list, tag equals featured, collection equal product tag, and they're passing a parameter here called the sky color, and they're saying the value is the sky is blue. They're also using visitor device type. So they're passing what kind of, is it a desktop, a tablet, or a phone? So that's another way to pass that into the module. Now, frankly, I don't know why you wouldn't just do that from the detail layout, because it's available there too. Maybe it's not in some layouts, but I've never had a problem getting to the device type. Even the current page name. So maybe there's some value in having the current page name. And you really access those custom parameters within the module by using a liquid tag with params dot, and then whatever you named your custom parameter. Now this span is not supposed to be there. It should just be params.skycolor, params.visitorDeviceType, params.pageName. So it's really as simple as deciding on what your name is, in this case, sky color, and then here's the value. And then from within the detail layout, you use params dot. So they did go down and try and show an example here. And I got to say again, it's pretty horrible because it just doesn't work. You know, they talked about the blog post and then they showed something entirely different. So it's not really a great example. So you can look at it to your heart's content, but not so much value there. So let me look. So in this case, they did module web apps render. I'm just trying to see what they did here. They've got a template of the custom car collection blog. So when I thought about, well, how this could be used, because this is the code they're saying relates to that, and it just doesn't relate at all to this custom tag up top here. But you could use it to pass an author name, and then to the detail page. Say you had a web app, or say you had an author's page, and you could pass that author's name to the blog module, and then loop through another module web app call with that name, find a match, and then put some more details on there. I've used something similar in some of the BC Gurus templates. You could get a specific blog post tag and use that to loop through, or even search a web app for related information or even products. So if you're on a specific blog post and it had certain tags, you could pass that tag to a module web app call, and then within the web app detail layout, you could show different information based on what the value of that parameter was. So I was trying to think of ways you could use their example, and that's really all I could come up with. If anybody else has an example that might go along with this particular module web app call, please go ahead and put it in the chat there. So the trick is to think of information from the page that you're on that would be useful on the page you're going to. So that's kind of what I summarize it as. So think of information from the page that you're on that would be useful on the page that you're going to. So I've used parameters to keep track of which campus a user was viewing and displaying appropriate content based on that. So we had an educational website, and they had two campuses within the same URL structure. So we used that custom parameter to keep track of which campus they were on. And then on whatever detail page they were on, we could show them different content based on the campus they were on. I've had some tab-based content that had images. I can show you that. So this happens to be a yoga site, and I have some tab content: flow yoga, gentle yoga, hot yoga. So this is just straight tabs. And when you have tabs, all the content is available on the page. And when you get down to these instructors, this is being generated by a web app, and there's a pop-up here. So when I click on her, it pops up. Well, the pop-up facility wants to have a unique ID. So you can imagine this Linda shows up on this tab. And if I scroll up and change to the next tab, she also shows up here. So if I wasn't careful, the jQuery plugin did not know which person to pop up, because you can only have one ID on the page. So I had to have a custom ID on all these. So what I did on the web app output was, for a given tab, I passed the name of that through a custom parameter. So if I inspect this, you can see I have this href of gentle staff pop-up 1. Now this particular plugin wanted an href with the appropriate information, because that information is down below here in a hidden div. Where did that go? So again, in the web app, I passed this gentle as the custom parameter. So you can see here, it's #gentle staff pop-up 1. And if I go up to the top again and go to flow and then check that same person, now you can see it's, sorry about that. You can see it's flow staff pop-up 1. And in that way, the jQuery plugin knows which item it needs to pop up. Now, that was an idiosyncratic. It was an idiosyncrasy of the plugin that I used, because it was using the href. There's other plugins where that may not be needed, but that's one of the ways I used a custom parameter. So I'll just paste what the module web app call looked like. So if you look in the chat, you'll see it's just module web apps ID equals whatever the ID is, filter equals classified, program equals gentle. So then I went params.program, and then I got that value of gentle or flow or hot, depending on what it was. So those all ran together. There was no line space between them. So hopefully that makes sense. If not, throw a question in the chat. And I'll just put the A tag. So on that same code, this is the A tag. So you can see it's got href and then params.program, staff pop up, and then counter I'm just using to throw a different number on there within the loop. So that's one way I've used custom parameters in the past. And I've also used it to pass what secure zone a user had access to, and then customize the documents they saw based on that. So we had a website that had some legal reasons to show specific documents to specific people depending on the secure zone they had access to. So I get the secure zones, and I was passing that in the module web app call, and then on the detail page, I would only show the output that was appropriate for what that person had access to. So then I got a really nicely detailed and a fairly lengthy but detailed bit of information from Mike on Cloud9 Online. And I guess the only way to do it for you really is to read it. And there's a fair bit of it. So maybe, just give me a sec. I'm going to just share that screen. And I'll zoom that in a bit so you can see it a bit easier. So, I mean, what he had was a client that wanted to provide customers the option to subscribe to a number of different mailing lists in a MailChimp integration. So this is after they land on a web form confirmation page. So they had a web form. After you filled it out, when you landed on the confirmation page, they wanted them to have the option to subscribe to any number of mailing lists. They didn't want to put that on the form itself because they were worried it would create some resistance and option overload, and they would lose people filling out the form in the first place. But of course, they also wanted to avoid re-entering the details that the customer just entered. So the requirement was to preload some of those values into the MailChimp embedded subscription form. Now, the complication for him in this particular case was that the MailChimp form was stored in a content holder. And so that was so that the client could maintain it themselves. And if they made changes to the MailChimp form, they could just copy and paste that in. So the issue was how to get the required originating web form values from the confirmation page across to the MailChimp form sitting in the content holder. So BC, of course, provides the web form values on the confirmation page through module web form results, but those don't make their way through to a content holder. So when he thought about it, he said you could modify the originating form's action URL, and I've done that in the past where you put some parameters on there. In this case, he felt that was clunky and potentially fragile, and I actually use that same potentially fragile. I use that fragile word a lot myself and try not to write stuff that does that. And he just has a general aversion to putting personal contact information in a URL. So I buy that. So his solution was to pass them as custom parameters to the module content holder so that the MailChimp form could then access them as this.params. Whatever the parameter name was. And that throws into the MailChimp integrated form. And as in his words, it works a treat. So I thought that was actually a pretty decent way to use custom parameters. Now that is all I got. Here's a better look at these module web app calls. So you can just see filter classified program equal gentle, program equal flow, program equal hot. And then from within the detail loop, I pick up these params.program. So now you know my secret. I have all my notes laid out, so I kind of have some idea at least what I'm talking about. So that, frankly, is what I have for passing custom parameters. Does anybody else in the audience or the community there have another example or have an opinion or have some feedback? It's pretty, to me, it's got to be a pretty, site specific or use case specific use. It's not something you can kind of just generically say, oh, I always use custom parameters for this or for that. It really is where you find yourself needing some information you don't have access to. And then you think back to, oh, I can pass a custom parameter, and that's how you get it in there. Now, let's see what kind of trouble I can get into here. And I'll share my screen. Since we don't have much else to talk about, I will share with you just the home page on this is the new template that's coming out. So you can see here, Foundation 6, there's a menu across the top, a slider, very basically styled. There is a read more button. There's some structure here. This is pretty standard, nothing really styled majorly. It's just to give you some concepts. This is a left 6 and a right 6 kind of thing. Here's breaking it into 3. Here's a video with an overlay, which is handy. Vertical slider, which you may not have thought to use for testimonials. This will be a grouping, some latest articles. Again, the intent was to style it as minimally as possible in order to let you take it and easily put your own style on top of it. Now, I think they couldn't help themselves. They had to put some kind of background on this slide here. I can't say that I blame them, but I see a couple of messages there. So Peter says he's used custom parameters to make recursive calls back into a web app to retrieve multiple record based on the lat and long and how close the locations are. So that what I hear you saying, Peter, is it's conversational almost. As you're going through web app items, you're using that custom parameter to go and get some information and bring it back to the detail view. Is that a fair way to say it? You can just shake your head. We can see you on the screen there. Thank you. Yeah. And Phil asks, can you send custom parameter to a module in an include file? I don't know, Phil. So if you have like a web app module within an include file, could you pass a custom parameter? My belief is that you could, because really, I don't know that you could go from one to the next to the next. So you couldn't pass it to, I don't know if you could pass it to the include file. You'd have to, I think, redefine it then and then pass it to the module. That's what I'm thinking, Phil. That would be worth checking to see. Do you have a use case where that would make sense, or? So that was my biggest challenge, was figuring out a use case where this stuff made sense. So Peter's pasted in some code for us there. If anybody's interested in that particular use case. Yeah, he's got location, lat lower, lat upper. So he's passing latitudes and longitudes into a web app. I think I saw this before somewhere, Peter, but yeah, I think, like, was it a real estate site? And you were plotting something on the map? I can't remember, but.
No, it's a bushwalking website. So it's lots and lots of locations in wilderness where you have grid references and lat longs. And people who are looking at a particular location want to know what's nearby. So one of the tabs on the screen is nearby if there are any locations within however many kilometres. So when they click on that tab, they get a list of those locations and they can then jump to that particular record. Very
cool. Yeah, you don't have to, but if you wouldn't mind sharing the URL so people can, unless there's some reason why it's not ready to go or whatever, I certainly respect that. But if it's something you can share, people might want to look at it.
There's one page of it, and there's a series of tabs, and the nearby tab will list all the locations that are close.
Okay.
Within half a kilometre, I think it is. Is that the radius?
It didn't paste for some reason, but.
Didn't it? Oh, it went to Phil. Sorry.
Phil's special, so that's
right.
Cool. Yeah, thank you for sharing that. And I don't know if there's much point in me showing it on the screen. That's fine.
I've also done it in a bookshop, if I could call it that, where they have multiple pieces of information that are different for each book that they want to be able to share. So it has to go and work out how many to share or to display for the particular book that you're looking at.
Okay.
I'm trying to think. I think there's probably another place I've done it. Really useful technique.
Yeah, very specific, of course, to
Yes.
the use case. But when you need it, it works very well, right?
Yep.
Nice.
Okay.
Thanks, Peter. That again, that is really all I have. So if anyone else has something, bring it forward. If not, we can just kind of turn it into talk about whatever might be on your mind, Business Catalyst wise or otherwise. Maybe we can figure out why Liz is just showing us a blurred image. What's going on behind the blur, Liz? So Phil asks, so the parameter is assigned with the this.param. That's how it's pulled out on the other end, Phil. So you assign it just by naming it. If you look in Peter's code, where it says lat lower equals, and he's just got a liquid variable there called lower dec lat. On the other end, where in the module web app detail page, where this is coming out, unless whatever the template is, he's got it nearby.tpl. He would do params.lat lower, params.lat upper. Hopefully that makes sense. So Liz is homesick today, so it's not a pretty picture, so she's put the blur filter on. And I must say, Mary, I'm disappointed I'm not seeing you running through a train station or riding a bus today. You must have got tired of me teasing you about that. So unless you come up with something else, you're going to have to. My granddaughter's over. I could hold her up on the camera. You could all smile at her, but that's not why we're here. Yeah, Peter's pasted some more code in there for us. Very nice. I'm not sure what you're asking there, Phil. Yeah, so he's pasted 2 levels of code there. The first batch of code is what's on the one page. The second batch of code is what's in the TPL page, which is where this stuff is being passed to. So it's unfortunate. You almost have to paste it into your editor and kind of look at it that way. That might be the best way to go. So Mary says she's got her home office now, so there's no more commuting. Nice. Does that make sense, Phil? I'm worried I might be confusing you a bit there. Yeah. So the assigns are in one file, and then the params dot whatever are in the kind of the receiving end. So the params are where you just name the parameters are in the calling file, lat lower, lat upper, or in the calling file, and then params dot lat lower, params dot lat upper are in the receiving file. Cool. I was tempted to try and do a tutorial on this, and then the more I looked into it, the more I thought, geez, I just can't really say this is a good use case for this. They're real specific. I don't know. If I did do a tutorial, it'd be pretty short, much like today's Sandpile. So again, that's really all I have on custom parameters. It's pretty specific. When you need it, it's powerful, but unless you need it, it's kind of a why bother. Well, Liz, you're late. That means you're not going to pass the test. I did paste the BC's documentation right near the top of the chat there. I will paste it again. It is not great. We don't have any tutorials on it, either on BC Gurus or on BC Academy. So it's a little bit of your own devices, but really it comes down to just naming your parameter and then picking it up on the other end. The only thing they said really is it needs to be on a tag that uses named parameters. You can't use it on one that uses just numbers, like Photo Gallery. Module Web Apps works great. Content holders works fine. don't know if the mic's picking that up, but she's in the other room singing a song. Yeah, so Phil's suggesting, for a presenter, the include would show that presenter's presentations from one web app and maybe the bio from another web app, etc. Sure, yeah, I buy that. So Peter says it's a very good way to filter a large list of web app items based on data in the web app fields. And I guess that's data specific to the page you're on. So like, again, if you're on an author page and you want to go to a map page and filter that map based on that author's information, that's a way to pass one to the other. Just as a, for instance. Peter just pasted another link there and you can see the search filters. And that goes along with the code that you pasted in earlier, Peter, is that right? No? Oh, a different site. Okay. So maybe I'll just... So just sharing that link. So these filters are on the left-hand side here, and whatever you select here is held or passed as a parameter. So when I click on, for instance, when I click on this one, these filters are passed as parameters. Is that right, Peter? Yes, no? Yes, no?
No. The filters down the left-hand side, if you click on one of the drop-downs and choose something, they will filter the list on the right.
Oh, I see. Okay. And this is a module web app call.
Yes.
Okay. So
now you can do multiple selections.
Yeah.
Of
course, I picked one that doesn't exist, but I get what you mean. So I guess
and then it's doing and it's totaling, it's telling you what's wrong with your filter there.
Okay.
But you can clear the filters and just put. So mostly probably canyons at this time of the year, you'd get canyons. They are going to be grade 3 or grade 4.
So there's grade 3 canyons. I got one choice there. Okay.
Yeah.
So I would normally have done that with a web app search filter. Did you find this to be more efficient?
Well, this is dynamic without going to another page.
Right.
It just applies it directly.
Yeah, which I would also do with a web app search filter. I'm not saying this is right or wrong. It's just I would have approached it differently, and I want to understand if this is a better way. I certainly want to know about it.
Well, I didn't. I just wanted them to be able to just go click, not go to a search results page, directly in the one particular screen. I wanted it to relate to the the new activities, the advanced notice ones, or the past.
Right.
And if the members of that club are logged in, they also get to see the details for the walk leaders.
Okay.
And an extra filter appears for them in that stage.
Okay.
I mean, they're dealing with about probably 70 or 80 walks that they're wanting to search through in each quarter of the year.
Mm-hmm.
But that was just a...
Yeah,
it's using Ajax to bring it back in.
Yeah. That's it's fine, and it's a good example. I can see how it works. And you're just passing the parameters in a query string up the top there. Yeah.
Yep.
All right, and Phil, assuming he doesn't mind, I'm going to just open his link there. So a faceted filtering system. So Phil, for web app search, you'd have to set all the filters at once, wouldn't you? No, I guess what's happening in his case, Phil, is every time one of these is updated, he waits a certain amount of time and then refreshes the page. Is that right, Peter?
The moment you click on it and select something, it goes and reevaluates based on the current selections.
Yeah, so as you drill down one at a time, it filters the right-hand side. So now, Phil, I'm not quite understanding what you're showing us here. So I would, this is how I would have normally approached that myself. So this is a straight web app search when you click on industrial, and of course they don't have any. It just does an Ajax return, right? So the URL doesn't change. I'm not passing any parameters. There's a hidden web app search form. And I'm just showing you how I've approached this in the past, not saying one's better than the other or anything like that. So you can see here, this is my hidden web app search form. And when I click that, it really just comes and unchecks that and then resubmits the form. Does that make sense? And you can filter by service as well. So if they want to see strategy, industrial, nothing there, of course, technology. Does that make sense? That's how I would have approached it. Now, I'm assuming it looks like you could have done the exact same thing with your technique there.
Is the one you just showed us based on categories?
Yeah, they're not even BC categories. They are a list. It's a, what do they call that in the back end? Oops, fields. So it really comes down to project categories, and it's just this. In their case, it's not dynamic in that you can't make it a data source for that technique. These have to be hard coded here. So it's just list box list is what I was trying to say there.
Yeah, I'm using actually using other web apps
to fill it up. Yeah.
And that also feeds in for when they do their data entry. The walk leaders log into the website and submit their walks, which then go off to using workflow to the walks coordinator who approves them, and they appear on the site. So
right. Yeah. Now this, it's the same thing. So they're using those same. I've also done it where a list like this is generated dynamically, and that works okay too as far as search goes. There's a little trick which Scott Reynolds actually covered in his latest tutorial here. Unlocking the mysteries of web app search. So for a long time, I thought you couldn't do data source. search data source, but you actually can. So that's kind of cool. So then you can also use data source to populate your dropdowns, which is what you're doing here, right?
Mm.
So you can in fact set up a web app search to search those. For the longest time, I thought you couldn't, but you can. And he talks about that technique in that video there. But anyway, and the only point I guess I'm trying to make is there's
Different
many
ways to skin a cat.
Exactly, yeah. And I've never seen your technique, so I'm gonna look a little bit closer at that, and that might be better in some cases, certainly than what I've been doing. So
I am restricted to the 500 items I can retrieve
right
in a web app.
Yeah, but again, like as you're filtering down, there should be less and less in the results. So really, oh, I see. Yeah. Where a search form would not be restricted. Well, it's still restricted by 500, but because it's pulled each time once you make a selection.
Yeah, I've got a very primitive search function.
Yeah, so you're in effect you're pulling like up to 500 results on the page, and then removing the ones that don't in a loop.
Yes.
Okay, I got it. So Liz says, "Love this being dynamic. I have a search this would be useful for. Can you use proximity in the filter from the web app search functionality?" I would use, if I were you, Liz, I would use a web app search in that case. So if you look at the partner search, this uses proximity, and this is using an Ajax search result as well. Does that make sense? So when I enter there we go. Oh, I broke it. That should show up me. Oh, I know why, because I moved. No, still broken. I think I broke this when I was playing with it a few Sandpiles back. Let's hope. No, still broken. Let me see. Oh, that's because it's, yeah. Anyway, doesn't matter. Oh, West, yeah. My company name is not West Kelowna. Let's hope. You can do it. There I am. It's not broken, Peter. So that's where I live. And here's someone that's close to me here. So Liz, that's the answer. Like that's the proximity search, and this is an Ajax-based search form, and it works just like it works fine as long as you're entering information properly. Phil says pulling data from multiple web apps into one page. He's doing this without parameters because I don't know passing ID params into include files would work. Yeah, fair enough. And that's back on this one. So pulling data from multiple web apps into one page. So the bio is from one, the presenter's from another web app. That's what I'm hearing you say there. Cool. I'm trying to think if I did. Yeah, it's an Ajax search as well. I really like the Ajax search. It works great. The challenge is pagination. It's not that you can't do it. I always default to just load more, but and let's see if we have any Daves. No Daves. Any Ellens? anyway, that's my go-to. So I'm going to have a closer look at Peter's method there and see if maybe that's appropriate. It's interesting. It's like that when I started off talking about that PHP thing that Code Production has done. And you kind of go, well, why would you do that? That's like, why would you use BC as a database and then have everything else in PHP? Why not just do it on a SQL database? But when you think it through and you think, okay, well, they want a CRM. BC makes a good, secure CRM. They probably wanted some kind of an interface to turn their things off and on. So that makes sense from a web app perspective. So, you think it through, you kind of get it. Just looking at my other notes here to see if I have anything else, but I don't really. So does anybody have anything else they'd like to talk about in the last 10, 15 minutes? Is there any limit to the quantity of custom params? I don't know, Phil. Doesn't say there is. I haven't hit a limit. You have a fair number there, Peter. It looks like there's a half dozen or so easily, right? I suppose there could be, but I have not come across it. I still struggle with the whole, like, there's just, I've used it, but it's just so limiting, not limiting, it's just such a specific use case for it. It's, I keep coming back to thinking, well, I think I can get that information some other way, through module data or through some other method. Even the yoga set I showed you, I'm pretty sure I probably could have thought of another way to do what I did there, but I think I must have read something about custom parameters that day and thought, oh, I'll use it here. Well, I'm thinking about it, that BC Gurus template, I'd have to double check to be 100% sure, but I'm 99% sure that we've pulled out the foundation builder and the visual content finder and those kind of apps for that particular template, and probably going forward we'll leave them out for a little while. As much as we like them, we got some feedback from folks that they were finding them a little problematic. If they liked them, that was fine, but if they didn't, they found them difficult to work with. So we thought, well, we'll take them out for a while. It doesn't mean you can't install them. It just means they're not pre-installed. It's all cool, Liz. Go ahead. Yeah, Peter says he couldn't find any other alternative to recursively retrieve data from the same web app. So being able to come back and back and back. So Phil asked, any Bootstrap templates? Not that I'm aware of. We did have a go at that a little bit, and looking at the results of the number of people that were accessing them, there just was not enough demand to try to build them on both platforms. So Liz asked, does anyone here have issues with accessibility? So the calendar module is not WGAC compliant. I can't say I'm overly surprised by that. Do you have a workaround for that, Liz, or are you actually looking for a workaround for that? I'm not even sure. Yeah, I'm not even sure a jQuery plugin would be compliant, just because of the calendar jQuery plugins I've worked with. I'm trying to think of how they could possibly be compliant, and I would have to say they're not. You might be faced with just listing it out rather than trying to put it onto a calendar. But does someone else here have a workaround for that? Have they come across that? All right, thanks, Phil. Appreciate it. Appreciate your input. Well, I just did a quick search for accessible calendars, jQuery calendar accessibility, and some date pickers popped up. But I don't see. Yeah, they're all date pickers, which is not the same as a calendar. Interesting. Oh. So I'll drop this link in. You gotta scroll down the page a little bit to, if you do a search for accessibility, it's talking about it. Liz, I don't know if this is your answer or not, but it might be a place to start. Oh yeah, well, I mean, maybe you can get the calendar at least to output the data in a format that you can plug into another plugin. That's typically how I do it, but that involves some liquid, of course. But okay, well, I'm out of, as I like to say, I'm out of bullshit. So unless somebody else has some to toss on the pile, maybe we'll call it just a little bit early this week. Oh wow, those are only two of them. Those are my, if I'm sitting around, I'm waiting for something to happen or whatever, I pick them up off the wall and just drum them while I'm sitting waiting. Let me see. I don't know if I have a readily available picture of them. Oh, no. Yeah, they're in my other room, so I can't really show them to you. But I've got 10 right now. I got 3 acoustics and 7 electrics, 8 electrics. Another time, yeah, another time. If you look at my my LinkedIn page, not that you need to go see me on LinkedIn, but I think I got a picture of some of them on there. But let's see. Yeah. It's not really the best picture of them, but I'll show it to you anyway. So that's some of them there. There's a Telecaster, a Strat. There's a Godin, that's limited edition. That's a Gretsch. There's my Les Paul. That's some of them. I got a PRS in there somewhere and an Ibanez in there somewhere. That doesn't show in that picture, but I have what they call GAS. I have bad GAS, which stands for Guitar Acquisition Syndrome. John has a Godin. That's interesting because that's a Canadian guitar. Do you know what model? I've got two actually. The one in the back, the top one there is Art and Luthier, which is also from Godin. See, we've devolved the guitars, Peter. An Ultra, okay. A6 Ultra, yeah, okay. Yeah, that's a Legacy behind me, which is a little bit smaller body. I was having trouble getting my arm around I had a Seagull for a while, which is also Godin, and I was trouble getting my arm around it. You know, my guitar instructor said, you buy the guitar that makes you want to pick it up and play it. And unfortunately, I've found a number of them that make me want to pick them up and play them. Yeah, I love playing that Gretsch as well, Penny. That's it's got a cool sound. They all sound different to me. For as much as you might think they're the same, they all sound different to me. They all feel different to me. My wife says they're my girlfriends, but I said, "Wow, if that's all I ever go after, then you're doing all right, honey." We've been 36 years together, so she thinks she finally got me trained. That's exactly why people have so many. Yeah, you think you found the one, and then you play that for a while, and you pick up another one and go, oh. I mean, I'm looking at another one. I've stopped myself from buying it for the last month, but I'm not sure how many more times. Like, it's like going to the SPCA and trying to come home without a dog. I mean, how can you do that? So I go to the music store for whatever reason, and I'm looking at a Fender Jaguar, actually, Jaguar, however you want to say it, because I pick it up and it sounds different to me. It feels different to me. So if I think I must have it. And then I hope I'll learn enough to be able to play into the guitars that I have. I hope I get good enough to represent them well. All right, well, thanks for listening while I entertain myself talking about guitars. And if there's nothing else, we'll talk to you next week. Oh, well, that's the comparison. I never make that comparison, Penny, because Karen likes her shoes and stuff too. But no, I'll never win that argument. Therefore, I don't even bring it up. All right, thanks again. We'll see you next week.